Alrighty, you're alive, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sierra. Welcome, Douglas County. My name is Kelly Robinson. I am the chairman of the Transportation Committee. Today is November 16th, 2021. And we're going to go ahead and get right into this agenda. It's not going to be too long, but nonetheless, it will be very fruitful. I'll start by doing roll call. I'll start with myself, Kelly Robinson, chair of the Transportation Committee.
Ramona Jackson-Jones, vice chairman of the Transportation Committee.
Sharon Subadan, County Administrator.
Miguel Valentin, Transportation Director.
Is Fred here, or is he not? Didn't we seat somebody into the committee? Was it Tiffany?
Yes, it was Tiffany.
It was Tiffany, and I asked that you consider adding Fred because of the public works aspect. Both of them are in CPM training today, so I would ask that they both be excused.
No problem. We still have a quorum, so we can continue the business of the people. So Miguel, let's talk about our agenda. The very first thing we have to do is to accept and adopt last meeting's minutes.
That is correct. The meeting minutes of October 19th, 2021 meeting have been distributed. Everybody's had a chance to review them. They're ready for acceptance and adoption.
Hey. If there's no edits or amendments to the meeting minutes, I'm going to let them stand as presented. Okay, no comments, no questions. All right, they're adopted. Miguel, next item.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. The first item on the agenda we discussed briefly at the BOC meeting earlier. It will also be on the voting session agenda for tomorrow, but that is the holiday traffic monitoring a memorandum of understanding with the city. That's something we do every year. We have actually cut back in the cost, to reduce the cost over the years for a number of reasons. One, there's quite a bit of work that we do ourselves in-house, and also we've been able to get better pricing from the vendors. So that item again is going to be on the agenda, a voting session tomorrow. Just wanted to bring before the committee to make sure that if there were any questions we could address them, but it's more a discussion item.
Well, that's fine. Madam Chair, are you okay? We already talked about it, obviously during the work session. Are you okay?
I'm okay. Mm-hmm.
Madam Administrator?
I'm good with it too.
Okay, let me go ahead. Administrator concurs straight to the board. All right, Miguel.
Okay, thank you very much. Second item on the agenda is the revised 2022 LMIG and SPLOST resurfacing list. We discussed it at the last meeting. It was copies of it were distributed to the commissioners, and I received some feedback, and as a result made some changes in the roads. The mileage is pretty much the same as before, slightly over 6 miles per district based on the available budget. So I'm ready to move that to the full board for approval of the list, and then it'll go to GDOT for the funding for the LMIG for 2022.
Okay, so you spoke to all 4 district commissioners?
I distributed the list and asked for feedback. I've talked to at least 2 commissioners that had some suggestions on some roads, but I have not had discussion with the others. Presumably they're satisfied with the list as it was distributed.
Okay. Were you able to address District 2's request?
I was.
Okay, very good. All right, so we want to go ahead and adopt and send it up as a recommendation, or?
Yes, we would need a recommendation to the full board to approve the 2022 LMIG SPLOST resurfacing list.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the 2022 LMIG list?
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll go around the room. Kelly Robinson votes yes.
Ramona Jackson Jones, yes.
Sharon Subidan, yes.
Miguel Valentin, yes.
All right, we got a 4-0 unanimous vote. All right,
Great.
motion carries.
Thank you much. Next item on the agenda, we had briefly talked about this, and may not have been at the last transportation meeting, might have been the prior one, but there is a request from the railroad for the county to consider vacating a couple of crossings. They do that periodically, and I brought it to the committee just as an informational item, and indicated to them that at this time we didn't have a particular interest in doing that. They've come back with a suggestion of perhaps a small cash incentive. Again, I don't think the crossings are something that we want to part with or consider eliminating. They do serve a purpose at this time, and they have for years. So, but I did want to bring it back to the committee just in case some of you may get an email or a phone call from Norfolk Southern about their latest offer, as they call it. The stipend that they're suggesting is in the $25,000 to $100,000 if we were to close both of those crossings. But I'm not suggesting that we do. In fact, I wouldn't think we would want to do that, but I wanted to bring it to the committee as an informational item in case, again, there was further conversation from others.
So what are the crossings?
There's the one at Temple Street, just north of 78, and the one at Hyde Street, which is just to the east, between, well, one is slightly to the west of Sweetwater, and the other one would be slightly to the east of Sweetwater in that same Lithia Springs area. One really at 78 and Temple, and the other one on Hyde Street between Temple Street and Arthur Drive.
So that's District 1?
It is District 1.
Yeah, that would definitely have a community impact. I mean, County Administrator, what's your experience with this type of situation?
So it benefits the railroad to close the crossings, because of course it's a safety liability for them. I guess for us, how much does it impact? I don't know the street network that well, so what's the impact to the citizenry if we did that? Because quite honestly, railroad crossings are a liability for us too. Somebody gets hurt, we're the ones responding. So it's kind of hard for me to say because I don't know the traffic counts for those particular two. I would kind of rely heavily on Miguel.
Yeah, and I would add that the traffic volumes are not super high for either one, but they do serve a subdivision. One of them is a secondary access to the subdivision, so if it were removed, it would only have a single access to 78. So that would not be desirable. The other one provides access off of 78 to the east of South Sweetwater, and makes it an easier turn if you're trying to access to the north of 78. You don't have to do that right at Sweetwater. You can go past that and then make the next turn. So they are reasonably good access points for those neighborhoods. To my knowledge, they do not have a lot of volume nor a lot of accidents. But the railroad is always eager to close as many grade crossings as they can. So not unusual for them to ask. What's more unusual? What would be more unusual would be for the county to say yes without any other consideration. They're offering a small financial consideration, but typically what in my discussions with them, what I look for is, we'll consider trading if you provide us a non-act grade crossing somewhere, then we would be happy to close those too. But otherwise, we're impeding mobility and connectivity and not gaining an awful lot other than perhaps some potential liability.
Yeah, would we, what is the process? We would have to have a hearing for something like that?
We would, we would in the sense that we would have to amend the official street plan or the road network plan. So at some point we would have to make provisions, have a hearing. Certainly you would want to have a hearing, if nothing else, for public input, because the residents in those areas would be significantly impacted.
Agreed. I think this is just sort of an FYI. It's something I would want to bounce off of Commissioner Mitchell before anything else is taken. Madam Chair, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Impact would be tremendous. That area is very dense. In that area, the population is very dense and traffic backs up. And definitely need some alternative route, another alternative measure. And it has to be something that would allow mobility, movement back and forth from across the track, back and forth across the track. So I'm not settled. I don't, and I'm usually good with change, but it's change good in this circumstance.
Yeah, and it's not about the monetary because of the impact. So let's hold off on this one right now.
Okay, certainly. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Chattahoochee, it's just a discussion item, Chattahoochee Hills Greenway Trail Project. We had talked about it a few meetings back. I wanted to bring it up again, and I'm going to share my screen and try to put a graphic up. Perhaps that will help with the okay, can you see that? Can you see the map?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So the Chattahoochee Hills Trail project is about 11 miles long, essentially from Boundary Waters to the Sweetwater State Park. And initially, the intent was to access the park at this location, if you can see my cursor, following Sweetwater Creek up to the park. A couple years, well, it was probably 3 years, if not a little longer. We had meetings with the park director and several staff members, went over the details of the proposed project. They were not in favor of that access. So the project, we looked for an alternate access and discussed with them coming up Rock House Road. So essentially following Riverside Parkway to Rock House, and then coming up Rock House and having a trailhead at the end of what would be Rock House and Bullard Road. I believe there's a segment in there. But so that is the concept plan. This graphic is from the approved project concept plan. We envision, because of the cost having gone up substantially, that it would be broken up into phases, 3 phases, for purposes of construction. But the design was to be done as one project, one design effort. Of course, we ran into some issues with the environmentally sensitive areas along the river, and we had to veer off the originally intended route and arrived at this alternate route after several iterations with the environmental folks at GDOT. And so this is what was approved in the concept report. And then the design effort began. However, we ran into some issues even as we were in design. There was a development that wanted to build a warehouse or industrial facility right over where part of the plan intended for the trail to be. And so we kind of went back and forth trying to negotiate with them and the ARC because it was a DRI, Development of Regional Impact. And ultimately, after about 6 months of back and forth, and after the ARC had issued their findings, the developer backed off of, they had proposed 2 buildings, and they came back with a revised plan for just a single building and eliminated the one that would have been right in the middle of the route that we were proposing as part of this plan. So in any event, the design has had starts and spurts, and we're at a point, we've been at a point really for the last maybe even all over this year, to where we're making just marginal progress because we ran into a funding issue for the PE phase. In discussions with the current designer, is going to take substantially more to complete the design of the entire route. We have been in discussions with GDOT and their environmental and planning offices about the possibility of segmenting the trail rather than designing the whole thing as one element, focusing on designing a component of it, one of the phases that makes the most sense from a logical connection point basis. And that we agreed that would be phase 3. Phase 3 would be the one that goes up Rock House Road and connects to Riverside. Now, there's also additional development since that time that has submitted for county consideration some preliminary applications for some industrial sites along Rock House. That is will be pending before the Planning and Zoning Board, and you'll have an opportunity to review those as they come to you at meetings, perhaps the next meeting or the one after. So saying all that to say that we essentially have paused, if you will, the design effort pending final determination from GDOT as to whether they concur with that change in focus from the design of all 3 phases together to designing just phase 3. The issue or the one of the reasons that kind of moved this phase up in the consideration is that it connects to the park, and it also connects to Riverside. Riverside Parkway has bike facilities, so it made sense for a multi-purpose trail to have those 2 end connection points. And so GDOT agrees with that, but it's been under review now by Federal Highway for consideration. We're waiting to hear back from them. The reason I wanted to revisit this at this meeting today is that the next item, which we'll discuss in a minute, is an opportunity for a request for additional federal funding for our TIP projects particularly. And the last projects that we discussed going after federal funding for, we had focused primarily on the right-of-way faces for the projects. This one is essentially lagging behind a little bit because of that cost in the overall design. So I wanted to get some feedback from you as to what your thoughts were about following this path, and whether we should include it as part of our application before the ARC. The applications are due by the end of the month, and those are done online. There will be a support resolution required. The resolution doesn't have to be in until sometime in December, but in any event, it would either include the resolution will include the projects that the board wants to include. My suggestion has been to focus on the TIP projects, and this is a TIP project that we initially did go after PE funds because we were hopeful that we could either do the entire thing with the existing funds or change the priority and focus on design for phase 3, which we would then have, presumably would have sufficient funds to complete. So with that, I'll pause and give you an opportunity to provide any input, ask any questions.
Okay. It is an important project, and it's something that we've been pursuing, to your point, probably about 3 or 4 years. My question is, how much money have we spent so far on design, and how much is left in our current budget?
I don't have the exact numbers before me, but it's in the neighborhood of about, I'm going to say $850,000 in that range that we have spent so far in design and the environmental document. Some of that effort would not be wasted. In other words, it would apply, for example, the environmental document would have applied to the entire length. So we would just extract the portion for phase 3 and utilize that. It's not all wasted effort in that sense, but that's about, we're about halfway through the expenditure on the budget for the project.
About 400,000. And how much is it going to take to finish it?
That they're talking in the neighborhood of another $3 million. Now that is if we design the entire, if we go for design of the entire thing. Now they've been the one contractor, Jacobs, has been, I'm sorry, AECOM has been at this for the entire time, probably the last 2.5 years or so. The county does not necessarily have to continue if we decided to revisit or get additional, go after additional funding, federal funding. We could pause the existing contract and open it up again. So we would know at that time where the number really is. But this contractor or this consultant is indicating in that neighborhood to be able to finish everything, the entire length.
All 3 segments.
Correct.
So $3 million. So I trust this is on the CIP. Is it on the SPLOST 2022?
The funding for, no, there is no funding for this beyond the funding that was originally approved. There is no additional funding that was earmarked for this project.
Okay, so this additional $3 million. This federal funding is for the full amount? Is there a match?
There would be at least a 20% match, yes. Now, the funding the funding period is from 2023 to 2025. Um, that's the call for projects. We could, under administrative rules, apply for a lesser amount, perhaps up to 2 million, directly through the ARC, not as part of the call for projects, but as an administrative request. Sometimes if there's additional funding, they will consider that. And that then would not need to be limited to the 2023 to 2025 timeframe. We could consider the 2022, or they could consider a 2022 allocation if they have funding available.
Madam Chair, this is just a discussion.
Yeah, again, I agree. I arrived in office in 2017, and I appreciate all the efforts that's been put into just moving it along. I'm just wondering, with this infrastructure bill that's just been passed by Congress, would dollars be able to, would we be able to utilize some of those dollars to appropriate some funding to help push this project along if the funding comes to Douglas County? And I'm trying to look at the categories that have come, that are couched into this infrastructure bill. And the one that comes to mind is reconnecting communities. Do you, by any chance, Director Valentine, know if there would be any funding for trails allocated within this infrastructure bill?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is one of the categories. Initially, some of the requests, you may recall, the board adopted a support letter for our application for earmark consideration at the Senate and the House. Mm-hmm. And so initially there was a list of projects that included all of our TIP projects that were submitted. As the bill went through the process, the list was eliminated in favor of a lump sum. So there are lump sum categories, one of which would be something that this project would fall under.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds promising. Am I leaning in the right direction with my thought process?
It is. The allocation for this type of project is not as robust as on the road network side. So it's more limited, but nonetheless, it certainly is a project that will qualify for that type of allocation. Now, with the infrastructure bill, there hasn't been a final decision as to the mechanism for dispersing those funds. I suspect that it's going to involve GDOT and the ARC one way or another, ultimately. But they haven't made decisions as to the mechanics of that. My sense is that because of the additional funding and perhaps the funds that are available for consideration would be more than if the bill had not been passed, substantially more. So it is promising in that sense that if, say, in past iterations of the call for projects, they may have had maybe, say, $15 million to allocate to trail projects or sidewalks and that type of project. Perhaps this time around it would be substantially more, 75, 100,000. So a lot more promising in terms of the overall potential.
Okay, so hope is a lot. We can keep hope alive. Is that what you're saying in a nutshell?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. I yield back to you, Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Valentine, so what will be the source for the match?
If the match funding is for awarded in 2023, then it would be a consideration for SPOS funds that may be available still or would become available. If not, then perhaps it would have to be either general fund or reprioritizing expenditures within SPOS. If the allocation is able to be made in 2022, then we would have to consider reprioritizing some of the SPOS projects, perhaps one of the projects, to be able to have the match. Now, one other component, just to make things a little more complicated, convoluted, if you will, we could, in addition to applying administratively for design funding through the ARC, in the hopes that they may have some funds available, which they do on occasion because other projects don't move forward, then we could, in addition to this project, apply for funding for the other TIP projects for which we already have a SPOS funding. And what that would do is, if we are awarded federal funds on any of those projects for which we already have the funds, then we could reallocate those funds to cover this project if it happened not to be, or if it happened to be awarded additional federal funds. Is that clear, or you want me to run through that again?
No, don't do that. But to that point, what about the other trail projects that are going on? And I know this one's a little bit further along than the other ones, but I just don't know. I know your time frame is what, end of the month?
That's correct.
What do you think about this one, Miguel? County Administrator, it is important. It is out of District 2, but we've been so delayed on this, and it's important for quality of life, but just like,
Peace Blast?
Any of those, but you still wouldn't be able to get access to money to 2023.
Yeah, but so how much of the funding would be design, Miguel?
How much of the funding would be design? Let me see if I can home in on those numbers. Off the top of my head, let me see if that's not. Yeah, this is total funding. That's not. I didn't break it up by design. Now, going into these totals, I added up all the designs I just didn't have as a category. But off the top of my head, we're looking at about 1 million in additional design for the Lee Road Phase 1. We're looking at 1.4 million, if I recall correctly, for Chapel Hill, and we were looking about 2 million for South Douglas, so about 5.5, and then 3 million for the Greenway. So we're talking about 8.5 million for design.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how much of the Greenway Trail was designed.
Oh, if the Greenway Trail, it would be 3 million.
Oof. I don't know which one.
Yeah, let's pause on that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's just pause right now, Miguel.
It's kind of hard. We have so many important road projects. I was hoping the design was a smaller number, but yeah, I think I would agree, Vice Chair or Chair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, let's just for the moment, just for the meeting, recognize duly noted on the administrative concurrence. I get it, but I need to think about that.
Yeah. We may need a bear trail strategy.
We'll come back to that. Let's go to the next agenda item. We'll come back.
Help is on its way, Miguel.
Maybe by next meeting we'll know more.
Okay, yeah. Well, the thing is, I have to file the application before the next meeting. So certainly I know what the desire is for the other three projects. This was one that we had kind of left off for this same reason. There was just not enough blanket to cover the entire bed, if you will. So, but the next discussion item is in fact tied into this, and that's the ARC call for projects, and that's where that slide comes from. And actually, the way this formatted just gives you the total, but this page also gives you the breakdown, federal funding total for the four projects. If we did that request would be 17.2 million, and the local share would be 4.3. Now, one thing to consider, Commissioner Robinson, perhaps in your deliberation, is that these four projects were the ones that the entire board, already approved the support letter for the application at the federal level. And that funding amount was substantially more than what we would be filing with the ARC at this time. So the entire board committed at that time to finding the local match for all of these projects if federal funding was allocated.
And what's the total match for all four?
The total match for the amounts that I have shown is 4.3.
Other than the fund balance, where do we have 4.3 million?
Well, again, keep in mind that the funding is predominantly in the years 23 through 25. The only possibility for an earlier need for funding match would be if we go after the additional design administratively through the ARC.
I got you. Understood. We're going back to our single view of everything, all of our projects, everything. We know the need. We know the cost. I don't know if I can pull the trigger right today. Will we lose this moment in time? Will there be another call for action, call for papers, or?
The ARC typically schedules call for projects every 2 years. So this is considered a 2022, even though they opened it up in late 21, is considered the 2022 cycle. Next cycle will be in 2024. So the thinking was that if we could continue to move the projects in design within the 2023 to 25 timeframe of this call for projects, we then would have several projects ready for right-of-way acquisition, and thus the request for that funding. The only funding for construction that would be part of this total would be for the I-20 Chapel Hill interchange, because that project is smaller and costs a lot less as well. And the timing would be able to be ready for construction in 2025. Most of the other projects, we'd be hard pressed to make 5 that are slated for 2026. So those would be able to avail the opportunity again through the ARC, perhaps in 2024, to request funding for construction for those projects. But at this time, we would be looking for right-of-way funding for the projects, and in the case of the Chapel Hill interchange, right-of-way and construction funding.
How about this? How about we put this on, Madam Chair, if you agree, bring it up to the full board since there's other projects that are considered, doing a special call meeting on Thursday.
That'd be fine. We'll bring it up.
Discussion. County Administrator, are you okay with that as a discussion item? Yes,
Absolutely. Sure. And I think we did include some tip funding on this philosophy forecast. It may not have covered every project, but I thought we had done some of it. So
Yes, we did. We do have the design funding for 3 of the 4, just not this trail project.
Okay, let's bring it up on Thursday.
okay, yeah, because that's if the others are covered, then that's a slightly smaller lift.
Yes.
Yeah, great. I'll definitely add that to the agenda.
Okay. You all right, Miguel, with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, well, let's keep going.
Okay, very good. That was all the items that I had on the formal agenda. I do have one other item that I wanted to bring to your attention, and that is we received the bids for the Maxim Road sidewalk project, and those bids came in. The low bid came in within budget, so we would be able to go through the process and put that before the board for award of a contract. The bids were open today. We still have to review them, make sure that all the numbers match properly, and there's no issues with the addition or whatever. And also call references as needed for the projects. Some of the contractors, actually several of the contractors, have bid on this project, have done projects for us before satisfactorily. So I anticipate that we will have a viable contractor to be able to award this contract at an upcoming meeting. Certainly not on Thursday, but at the next meeting, which would be the first December meeting, which starts actually in late November. It's the 28th, 29th.
That's good news then. That's another important project from a safety perspective. So good. We're moving that one along. So is it the 28th or is it the 1st of December? Can we move that meeting?
Let's see if I could.
Oh, it's the 1st of December.
1st of December.
1st of December, yeah. Okay. Well, sounds good. Sounds good to me. Anything else, Miguel?
Actually, on my schedule, okay, maybe I haven't updated my schedule, but I have the work session on the 29th.
Yeah, I have it on the 29th also.
And the voting session on the
30th.
Why did we do that? Okay. Well,
Let me look.
I'm fine whenever the next available meeting is, but yeah, please confirm that.
I will.
Sounds good, Miguel. Anything else?
No, sir. That's all the items I had.
Okay. County Administrator?
Nothing from me, sir. Hey, Chairman.
Madam Chair, you got the last word.
When is our December meeting?
You're not muted. Okay.
Sorry about that. I wanted confirmation. You're right. Work session is 29th, and the actual legislative meeting is the 30th of November.
Sounds good. No problem. Madam
Okay.
Chair, you get the last word. Do you want to close out
Great
with?
meeting again. A lot of progress being made, and look forward to some of those items that we just discussed coming before us at the special call meeting on Thursday. Miguel, you did mention some dates that really gave me provided a sense of comfort for me. You said the year 2023 through 2025 on some of those projects. That's an opportunity for us to hopefully the citizens to buy in or weigh in on another SPLOST, and that will give you some capital funding that you need. But other than that, the meeting went well, and thank you so much, Chairman of the committee, for allowing me to speak, and I yield back to you.
Okay. Well, we're going to keep this moving. No need to belabor it. A very quick meeting. Well done, Miguel. Can we keep them like this?
Oh, I can try.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else that needs to come before this Transportation Committee of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, let this meeting stand adjourned.